I've already done this one before in a different form, I suppose. And if you've been paying attention, you would know that belief in God and the afterlife are essential in helping you deal with bribes and threats. So if you're atheist, you would be more susceptible to threats and bribes than if you were an ethical monotheist, knowing what you are and aren't supposed to do in order to get to the better place in the afterlife. But I will in some way be using Charlie Kirk in the title in a bit. Well, I suppose I should do it now. The effect of killing of Charlie Kirk on atheists are greater than they are on ethical monotheists. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you really do believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished, you would, in spite of what Charlie Kirk, in spite of what has happened to Charlie Kirk, you would carry on regardless, believing that good will be rewarded and evil punished, and not vice versa, as in our matriarchy. So, in the worst case scenario of the killing of Kirk being by the security agencies who want to protect the matriarchy, um, it is intended to have a chilling effect on discourse, on what social conservatives are allowed to say or feel they can say without fearing assassination. Obviously, if you think this life is the only life, you would want to prolong your life as comfortably as possible with as much status, material wealth, uh, nice holidays, or the things you want, instead of making sacrifices and then you're dead. Isn't it obvious why people in former ages knew, understood the system? Can we escape this in the 21st century when most people are atheists? I don't think so, because fundamentally there are other groups who wish to harm our group, and we will need to be protected from the groups that want to harm us. As women, we would look to the men to protect us from criminals and invaders and the like. And therefore, as women, it would be in our interest to support the patriarchy. That's really all I'm saying. But it would appear that people most gloating about the death of Charlie Kirk are women, college educated women, it would appear. Uh, why? Why would that happen? It must be because they think their interests are most threatened by people who speak and think like Charlie Kirk. And being young and good looking um, must have, well, validated his views if he were not, but perhaps if he were not such the golden boy of Christian conservatism in the UK, in the US, he might not have been seen to be such a powerful figure. Perhaps because of his precociousness in becoming such a powerful influencer, somebody might have thought that he could very well be the next president and wanted to put a stop to that. Perhaps, we don't know. But the worst case scenario is that it is intended to frighten us. The three-letter agencies have embarked on a campaign of terrorizing us. And we should perhaps understand what it is they're trying to do. So they're saying, don't try it, don't even think of trying it. You'll know what will happen to you if you get too powerful and you're too that you are going. You're seen as the future poster boy of Christian nationalism, which is what the Wikipedia entry of Charlie Kirk says he supported. I suppose white women are more triggered by it because they would be more likely to, if they have any epigenetic memory, of what their female ancestors had to endure under coverture and very young marriage in the state of Delaware. In 1871, the age of marriage was lowered from 10 to 7. I don't see any point in. I mean, of course, we should condemn people who are gloating about somebody being murdered just for expressing a conservative view. But good might come out of it if we use this event correctly in service of the cause. What is the cause? The restoration of the patriarchy. Now, I am trying to explain to people, to atheists, that there is no way around this problem. I know atheists want to enjoy their sexual liberation, but the problem is if you have it, then you will have a society of ever lowering IQ and standards of behavior. And more events such as this will continue to happen as your society descends into chaos and criminality and political violence. What I find really frustrating is people that, okay, either they think they know what I'm going to say, or they genuinely misunderstand me. And why do I just keep talking to morons and vegetables in the chat who are just invested in blaming the Jews for everything? So Dr. Mengele says Israel did it. There's no point speculating because we don't know. And well, we're just going to get ourselves into trouble like Lucy Connolly did when she assumed that the Southport Slayer was Muslim. So, however angry and frightened we are, we should look at things impartially. So, the worst case scenario was that the assassination was state-sponsored by one of the security agencies with the intention of terrorizing the American public who support Trump and social conservatism, and saying, even the golden boy gets it. Or you could see it as divine punishment from God who forbade idolatry and blasphemy. Or you could see it as, on the surface, what it appears to be, that some crazy Mormon kid got it into his head that killing Kirk would be a good idea. So three. One is divine, one is governmental, I suppose. State-sponsored killing. And we know currently the US government is, the American establishment is divided and fighting with each other. It is a culture war, and a lot of people don't seem to know what it means. A culture war is, well, you get one part of society supporting one thing and another part supporting the other. In the case of America, it's social conservatism, marriage and family values, no gay marriage, no gender recognition certificates, that sort of thing. That's matriarchy, and the other lot wants to restore marriage as a way of regulating gender relations. So obviously the two are diametrically opposed, and in a way it's not at all surprising that it is actually an existential struggle for survival of the matriarchy, and they're going to do what they can to show they want to hold on to the matriarchy. Now, I know a lot of people are frightened about talking about these things, but I'm saying they have no choice. If they're men, they have no choice, because if they don't fight, they will be disgraced. They may not. Since most of them will die childless, they will not have descendants to curse them. But I'm trying to explain to you a situation when you have two groups of people, and one society practices marriage and the other doesn't. And they live side by side, they are neighbors. What do you think is going to happen when the matriarchy degenerates into an aging and shrinking society? What do you think their stronger, more organized neighbor will do to them? What do you think, eh? So I am saying, let's assume even a matriarchy does not want women, will not go so far as to say women should to join the army to defend their country from invaders. What I think the matriarchy likes to do is has a lot of opinions on a lot of things that pertain to men, presume to interfere, but really still expect them to do that job, and blame them when things go wrong. This is so it would be a situation where women insist on becoming firefighters, soldiers, police women, and then when policing and national defense and firefighting is not what it used to be, they will blame the men. And the men will never be able to escape responsibility, because if they have the monopoly on violence, the question will eventually be asked, well, why did you do all the stupid things they asked you to do? Were you stupid? Were you scared? So there's no status in being stupid or scared. And to carry on behaving like this is not being of particular benefit to your society or to men in general. So men have to behave like men. And this means that they have to at least say that they are prepared to die for the principle of being men. I know that the patriarchy doesn't want anybody prepared to die for any principle, and that is because they know that this fearlessness would allow them to be overthrown. And that is why anybody who says they are prepared to die for their principles will be called fundamentalists, fanatics, etc. But what is the purpose of having convictions? They didn't just come out of nowhere. And why does nobody ever talk about these things? So if you don't have any convictions, then you don't. It means you don't really believe in anything. It means that you are easily swayed, like the grass. And this reminds me of an old Chinese saying, which is something to do with the grass, and I can't remember it now. Ah, yes. The people are the grass, and the law is the wind. So the law is important in enforcing behaviour, and obviously the law must reward behaviour that is good for society and punish behaviour that is bad for society. And what has happened to the West is testament to how people can just completely lose their shit. So you can, be the global hegemon and mentally be rotting inside and doing crazy, stupid, evil things to destroy yourself while blaming the Jews. I think blaming Jews is actually self-destructive because you're outsourcing the source of the problem. You can blame Satan or foreigners or Muslims or Jews, but ultimately, I think that the enemy is within. So the enemy within tells us, oh, who am I to say anything? Nobody listens to me anyway. But of course, you know that if enough nobody's said something, something would happen. Things would change. Now, what is the best way of defeating the matriarchy? It would be, in a non-violent way, of course, and it is to show that they are the minority, and they are surrounded, and there is no way out. And you give them a golden bridge on which to retreat, which is to basically join you. And it can be easily done. And I would like to explain it to somebody in theory capable of understanding these things. So I'm not expecting people to agree with me, but can they not discuss ideas, new ones, about how to deal with being pushed into a corner, really? If the assassination of Charlie Kirk was accomplished by a three-letter agency, then it means that they're going to do it again and again and again until people get the message and shut up. That could be what actually happens, or people just kept going until the horror of the patriarchy is over. E. Michael Jones, some time ago, put up a video about the Zulu warriors. And I think this explains war very well. What he showed was that the British were smaller in number but better armed, and the Zulus were greater in number but only had spears. But they still won because they kept coming. They kept coming faster than they could be shot down by the British. Later I'll find you the actual video when he explained it so well. But that's what it is. This is how wars are fought. You have to expect casualties and sacrifices. And that's why the Vikings, who are known for their fighting and pillaging and raiding and all the rest of it, their belief system was that when they died, if they fought bravely, they would enter Valhalla, where every day warriors would go out and fight, and every evening they would return for a great slap-up meal. And this was their idea of heaven and hell. And I guess the people who weren't warriors, wouldn't have an afterlife at all. Now, how many people really believed in it? We don't know. People say they believe in things when they don't really, or they might believe in it for one day, but not the next. And sadly for me, I keep talking to people who are like that. They say one thing because they feel it, but only for that moment, and that moment passes, and they no longer feel that God exists. These are men without conviction. Where are we to get our convictions from? We can only find something that we're absolutely sure about. We're not going. I think a lot of people think convictions are belief in our religious belief system, that good is rewarded and evil punished in the afterlife, but not quite believing in it. And therein lies the problem. So Vincent and I were talking about, what's that word again? Doxastic or something like that. And it means that you don't know if it's true, but you hope it is true. But that's not a conviction. A conviction is something that is what you base your entire philosophy on. So in my case, it is my conviction that the Quran is the best available guide to humanity. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, who cares? Who cares what you think, Claire? Well, the purpose of basing your actions, your behavior, and your thinking on a conviction is that you have this thing called follow through. So if you believe X, then you must do Y. It's that kind of thing. If you love me, you bring me flowers every wedding anniversary or something like that. If you loved me, you wouldn't be unkind to me. If you're my friend, you wouldn't be slandering me. You can think of lots of examples. So it's a matter of logic, really. Be transparent. Do what you promise to do. be consistent with what you claim to believe. And most people are not consistent, or they don't take the logical next step. So the logical next step is obviously secular Quranism, but in order for them to arrive at the conclusion, which coincides with mine, that secular Quranism is the only way forward, is that they too have to believe that the Quran is the best available guide to humanity, right? And actually, even the most rabid Islamophobe does not disagree with me, because I've done this for years, and they can never produce a better book than the Quran, even though they hate it. So they've lost all the arguments. So the left, therefore, with she may be right, she may have won the argument, but I still won't concede because I hate her idea so much. And the people who won't concede and who hate secular Quranism very much are many more than little old me. But you see, thinking mathematically, or do I mean arithmetically? This is the first time I've tried to explain this, so bear with me. You know that whatever times 1 is, whatever that number is, so x times 1 will be x, no matter what that number is. But x times 0.9 will be less than that number. Do you see? I may not be explaining this very well. So if you think of x as the thing that you claim to believe, and if you're in perfect accord with what you're supposed to believe in and what you're supposed to do, then it would be 1, right? I don't know, 999 times 1 is 999. And you, by just being at 1 with the ideology you claim to support, you allow it to exist in an unchanged form. But if you say X, but without conviction, and it's times 0.9, then the sum will be less than whatever is the sum that you're saying it is. And therefore, if you claim to believe in something, but you don't either say or do it, you diminish it. That's what I'm trying to say. You diminish the thing you hold. You claim. You diminish the belief you claim to hold. Every time you try to use it, but don't use it with the support that it needs. So another analogy that comes to mind is that this thing that you want to support is an object of a certain size. Make it a flat thing, a square or a triangle. It doesn't matter. But anyway, you want to push it through, but you don't give it the support. So let's say something fragile like a cake, and you want to push it through, but you only have the hand that is pushing it through, and it obviously doesn't cover the whole surface of the cake, right? And because it doesn't, the bits that are unsupported by your hand, in fact, crumbles or is cut off or something, and so you don't come through with your whole cake. or pi or square or whatever it is. You need to support the thing you say with truth and logic. And if you can't, this is what's going to happen to your sacred belief system. It falls to pieces every time you push it through without the support of truth and logic. Then you are, well, damaging it, really. I'll go through the chat now. Yeah, everybody is calling out Israel, Dr. Mengele. I mean, it's just so retarded to just blame the Jews because you hate them for everything. It's really, really retarded. The only reason why Jews get such an elevated status is because of Israel. Israel is an American colony and America wants to hang on to it. And obviously doesn't want to say, well, we kick people around because we've got nukes and we have the best, the most powerful bombs and aircraft carriers, etc., in the whole wide world. That is the problem, right? So they're going to wrap it up in a nice way and say, oh, we're only doing it to protect the Jews. The Holocaust must never happen again, never again, never. I know, Dr. Mengele, you think that the Jews control everything because they're being privileged. And I'm saying the American Empire, which is very cunning, is using Jews. So the whole Zionism, anti-Zionism business is really a Punch and Judy show. Do you know what a Punch and Judy show is, Dr. Mengele? It's a seaside puppet show for children, and Mr. Punch and his wife Judy are really the same person. And therefore the puppeteer controls the show, and only little children who don't get it think that Punch and Judy are different entities. So I'm saying Israel and America are the same. Israel is a proxy of America. Israel is the unsinkable aircraft carrier of America used to project American power in the Middle East, to keep an eye on the oil and the Arabs, and may possibly start a war with Iran. That is how it should be seen, not as an additional reason to hate Jews. Netanyahu would, well, I'm sure he is paid or blackmailed. We don't know, bribed or blackmailed to do all these things by the neocons. Okay, now you're going on about the stupid Epstein files. Why can't you see that Epstein Island? I mean, could Jeffrey Epstein have been wealthy enough to buy an island? I don't think so. I think it was the American government, providing this place and letting Epstein call it Epstein Island. It's the American Virgin Islands, isn't it? In the middle of the Caribbean. So they go there, invite their celebrity guests, entice them into these honey traps, and then blackmail them until the day they die, I guess. I mean, wouldn't you do that if you were the CIA? Hmm? All these hotshot lawyers, actors and actresses, members of the royal family, I don't know. It's obviously how any spy agency would operate. You just invite powerful people to compromise themselves and then just then they will have to spend the rest of their lives, being blackmailed and threatened or bribed. Lakeside, thank you for your question. I've actually asked E. Michael Jones if it is time for us to talk again. And he tells me he's writing his autobiography, so we have that to look forward to. I did ask him if I would be given a mention in his memoirs, but I haven't had an answer. What else did we talk about? Yeah, he actually said he wanted to talk about Leibniz's best of all possible worlds. And he was sort of saying he wasn't quite sure what it was, but I know what it was, so I told him. So basically I said, if we are, the whole idea is that if we believe that God is benevolent, if we really believe that, then we would have to believe that he made for us the best of all possible worlds. And this means that everything that has ever happened was meant to happen. So yeah, I guess I've had a settled position on Leibniz's best of all possible worlds, so that wasn't a difficult question for me to answer. Because if we didn't think that, then we would forever be thinking shoulda, woulda, coulda, if only that, and then this horrible tragedy wouldn't have happened, and to cry over spilt milk is, well, unprofitable. And then of course you'll have to find somebody to blame, and it will be the Jews, right? And it doesn't help to blame the Jews because, well, look, if you say you believe in God, I know most people are not believers in God, but if you say you believe in God, then you're actually not supposed to blame the Jews. You're supposed to blame God, right? You blame the top man. If there's some being in charge of the entire universe and it keeps going wrong, I guess he's trying to tell us something, right? Because this is how we're supposed to think if we really took the whole thing seriously. And the book of Isaiah, I forget which verse, says this. It says, I, God, created good and evil. I think it's chapter 45, verse 7. So, assuming this is true, then everything good and everything evil can be attributed to him. So I know a lot of people don't take it literally. Even those who claim to be Jews, Christians, and Muslims, they don't take it literally. And I think actually that's their problem. Because if they took it literally, then they would think, well, I feel that God is not quite happy with us. Look at how our society is going. And it's a real pain. And I want life to improve. And then you think, well, if the problem is that we're not obeying his rules, then clearly the problem can be solved by obeying his rules. Right? This is so obvious, so simple. But I think we're just being discouraged from thinking like this because, as I was saying earlier about E. Michael Jones talking about the Zulu warriors thing, right? So it was a Zulu war, and the British were fighting them, and and the Zulus kept coming, and there were more Zulus to break through the British defences, even though they were better armed. Okay, so this is how to understand the ideological war. And if we all just give up and stay silent, then we do deserve to be shot in the throat. I'm sorry, but this is, what are we, cattle? And who do those men think they are? That they can join us ladies to wait for a knight in shining armor? And why do they think that why do they think they can do this? Have they no shame? And it must be because they actually believe in the myth of feminism. So if you want to be different from women, then you must behave in a different way and say things like, well, we are expected to fight these wars, civil or foreign, and therefore you must give us the respect that we need in order to wish to do that. Otherwise, we'll just get confused and want to be women and start dressing up in drag and also wait for our knight in shining armor. And if he ever arrived, he would slay them anyway because he'd be so disgusted by all these men in beards, dressed as maidens, waiting for him to, sweep them up and put them on his horse. I mean, it is maddening and disgusting. So why can't we be clear about this? Women are supposed to think in one way and behave in a particular way to make men want to do what they want. Otherwise, they will want to be women. And the psychology can be easily explained. Sooner or later, when a man tires of going up to work and facing his enemies and his employers and his oppressors every day, he might think, and who could blame him, that it would be more fun just to stay at home, do a bit of cooking and cleaning, look after the children. They think they could manage to do that. And if you say they're equal, men and women are equal, and women do men's jobs, men will think, well, why can't we do women's jobs? I would like to be a nanny or a housewife or a prostitute. And when you tell them it's okay to think like that, then, well, this is what you get. So the very important principle that the government gave away when they when they passed the Gender Recognition Act and decided that transgender people are to be treated equally, well, why would you treat somebody who is mentally ill equally to somebody who isn't? That wouldn't be fair, would it? And it's not exactly hard to see that if men are encouraged or allowed to think it would be better for them to be women, then they will want to do it, because men being motivated by sex would surely love to enjoy feminine privilege, which is the privilege of having more offers of sex than they are prepared to accept. So it is not at all surprising that after 50 years of feminism, men might think it's more fun to be a woman. A woman always gets sex without having to ask for it or pay for it. And that's what they want to be if the government thinks it's socially acceptable to choose this lifestyle option of masquerading as a member of the opposite sex. I've made myself reasonably clear. I never really know if people understand me. Okay. Now, Lakeside continues. His denial of race is problematic when it comes to the 20-year-olds, Gen Z. He's right about a lot and is a good guy, but out to lunch on race and nationality and the youth. Look, come on. Of course, Michael Jones understands race. He actually told Jared Taylor and I understood what he said. He's saying race cannot be your religion because white nationalism is a belief system that is low status, if not actually criminalized. And in fact, white people are known to use Christianity as their religion. So if Christianity has failed, then they should find a better religion. That's so obvious. Why can't they just do it? Just admit that, sadly for you lot, your ancestors have been terrorized. They were terrorized by their absolute monarchs into pretending to believe that Jesus is God. And when they stopped being terrorized, they ceased to believe. What's so hard to believe about that? History confirms it. I'm not making stuff up. I'm not making up any story about chip burning being an exclusively Christian practice, am I? So for a while, Christians ruled the world, but they also fought amongst themselves, as you may have heard from the wars of the Reformation and World War One and World War Two. So Christianity has not protected white people from each other, let alone non-white people. I mean, just accept finally the fact that Christianity failed. It failed a long, long time ago. It didn't just happen in the last 50 years. I would say it failed when Rome fell, which was a long time ago, right? It fell in the 6th century, or was it the 5th? And then it failed again when Christendom entered in 1918, and you still won't accept it. You still want to return to the vomit, like the dog returning to its vomit. The fool returns to his folly. It's like you use his parachute and it failed to open, and then you decide to use it again. Now, I started talking about convictions at the beginning, and I'm saying you're not going to have any conviction if you don't really believe the thing that you believe is true. If all the time you were just pretending that to believe that Jesus is God, to believe that men and women are the same and should be treated equally, then, well, your beliefs are based on incorrect information. And if you want to survive, surely you know that telling yourself comforting lies is not a survival strategy. That's why truth and logic are valued, because they are survival strategies, aren't they? So if your religion has failed, go and find a better one. What would be a better religion than Christianity? Obviously, a religion that is easy to believe, which is the opposite of the Trinity, and then it would be accompanied by a holy book that is easy to follow. That applies to Gentiles worshipping the most powerful God conceivable. So it has been said that Charlie Kirk was a martyr to free speech. Well, he didn't martyr himself. Possibly if he were told that he'd be shot in the throat for speaking his mind as he was doing, he might have just stopped, wouldn't he? Then it wouldn't have been then he wouldn't have been a martyr if somebody had bothered to ask him, look, if you won't stop saying the things that you say, we'll have to kill you. Well, he might stop, right? And then he wouldn't really be a martyr. But he wasn't given the option. Because he was a golden boy of Christian nationalism, he was shot. What are we to conclude from it? Particularly when the shooter was supposed to be another kind of Christian, a Mormon. And Mormonism is interesting in that it is a white American religion, indigenous to America. If God exists and he didn't approve of Christianity and idolatry, I suppose you could say that it is a fitting punishment for two kinds of Christians who persist in their idolatry and blasphemy. But it's all about what belief system you subscribe to. So you can believe in God, and if you're not Christian, you'll think, well, perhaps God is punishing these Christians. If you're an anti-Semite, as Dr. Mengele is, then you'll blame everything on Jews. If you want to attribute the suffering of America to a non-divine cause, then it must be the fact that Americans do not have an official moral system and don't seem to want one. In my previous stream, I was talking about Mary Harrington talking to Paul Kingsnorth, and I forgot to mention that I was heartened by her talk using that term, an official moral system. It's my term. I created that term, official moral system. So I suppose I can pat myself on the back for getting through to Mary Harrington what it is I was saying. And obviously I don't want to be doing everything myself, and other people talking about official moral systems would be very helpful indeed. So I think we are inching forward like a glacier, but I would like to go a little bit faster. And for that reason, I prefer to challenge British intellectuals like Mary Harrington and Paul Kingsnorth. And if they were true intellectuals, they would, well, if they're too terrified of talking to me directly, they can always discuss my ideas. And if they don't want to mention me by name, they can talk about my ideas without crediting me with them. I don't mind. So, Lakeside, I hope you're clear now. Your race cannot be your religion because you know, even white people, when they were all white and Christian in Europe, they didn't get on with each other. Don't you know that? And then they moved across the Atlantic, to America, to North America and South America, and they fought with each other, and they fought with each other, and they were all Christian. So Christianity has failed you again and again and again, and for some reason you just refuse to accept it because your hatred of Islam and Muslims is greater than your desire for a solution and survival. How sad is that?